Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. My name is Sonny. I'm a board member with Illinois People's Action, also staff of One People's Campaign. Today's our fourth community meeting in response to the COVID-19 crisis. In previous weeks, we have discussed that what our community and local governments can do to ensure that we come out of this crisis strong. We heard from community members who don't know how they will pay for essentials after being laid off because of the business closures. We've heard from family members and inmates of the McLean County Jail who worry about the safety and health of our loved ones, many of whom have not even been convicted of a crime. We have also heard from professionals in the social services about the inadequacies of existing shelter network to ensure that people without homes can safely shelter in place during this pandemic. Today, the McLean County Health Department reported 14 more people with confirmed COVID-19 tests, the highest one-day increase to date. Since our last meeting on Wednesday, the number of cases in McLean County have more than doubled. 62 have been confirmed. Of those 62 individuals, 31 are isolating at home, 6 are hospitalized, 23 have recovered, and 2 people from our community have died from coronavirus. Over the past week, the country has also begun to report confirmed cases by rate. While only 8% of our county's population is Black, our Black neighbors account for over 30% of all cases reported, where race has been known. This confirms what many of us have worried about, that the impact of coronavirus will exacerbate existing inequalities in our community. Today, reporting has surfaced the increased number of cases among grocery store employees and other frontline workers. We know that it is the workers who are already poorly paid that are being asked to sacrifice their own health and keep everybody else well fed. It was workers in precarious and low-paid service jobs who were first to be laid off and lose their paychecks. And as the details about the federal response continue to emerge, we know that it will be largely by people who are already struggling and vulnerable, who are most likely to be waiting on a check or not receiving one at all. We will continue our conversation this week, focusing on how our local government can ensure that we take care of everybody in our community who is left behind by an inadequate response from the federal government. But before we start, we do have a few ground rules on how we'll be operating tonight. Number 1, only assigned speakers will be allowed to speak, but we open the floor for comments and questions at various points throughout the meeting through the chat function. Number 2, if the moderator selects your questions and/or comment to be shared out loud, you will be temporarily unmuted by them. If we don't get to your question or comment, use the sign-up form and we will follow up with you after the meeting. Number 4, we will be sharing various links throughout the chat, so keep a lookout. With that said, tonight we'll be hearing about 3 of the most urgent needs. First, Cecilia will share updates on housing issues and needs. We'll hear personal testimony from Bloomington resident Dane Helm. Second, Lewis will cover the progress we made making direct aid happen in Bloomington, and we'll hear updates from our grassroots leaders, Candace and Sandra. Then we'll be joined by Scott Black, alderperson for City of Bloomington, Ward 7. Finally, Olivia will update us on the decarceration efforts and talk about the cost of keeping in contact with folks in jail during the crisis. After we've heard from each one of our action teams, we'll talk about what you can do over the next week and have some time for a Q&A. For now, I'll pass things over to Cecilia.
Thanks, Sunny. Good evening, everyone. It's been 2.5 weeks since Governor Pritzker initiated the shelter-in-place order to prevent further spread of the COVID-19 virus in communities across the state. These orders are manageable to follow for those who have a secure home, a stable income, and access to food and other essential supplies. But many people in our community don't have these basic and essential needs met. We have more than 200 people in McLean County that are homeless, either sleeping in the shelters, outside the plasma center, or on the streets, and that doesn't include the many people who are couch hopping. We heard last week from homeless service staff on how social distancing in our shelters is impossible to follow, with large groups of people sleeping and eating all in the same space. Our social service staff, who outside of a pandemic situation already work beyond full capacity to aid people, are now having to operate with even less staff and put their own health and life at risk to contracting the virus. They should not be expected to front all of the weight of this crisis. It has now been 3 weeks since we've seen our first case of COVID in McLean County, and over a week ago, we asked the Town of Normal City's manager, Pam Reese, and Mayor Chris Coos for a virtual meeting to address these unique housing needs. We still have not received a response from either of them. Knowing that we already have a housing crisis in our community and knowing that this pandemic will only increase the severity of that crisis, we're asking for the town of Normal and the city of Bloomington to create a plan to provide safe housing for their residents. And we are asking them to include everyday members of the community like us in the creation of those plans. Now, I want to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Dane, who's going to be sharing some of his own experience. Dane, are you here with us right now?
I am, Cecilia. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So can you share, can you summarize what you've been through in the last year?
Well, in 2019, I was arrested for a crime that I did not commit, and it does unfortunately happen. And I was detained in the McLean County Jail for this. The problem was that my bond was at a very high amount, and I could not meet that. So it took me approximately 6 months in order to fight my case, clear my name, and be released from the jail. When that happened, it was fairly sudden. It happened without much warning. The charges were dropped against me, and I was released, which I was thankful for. But the problem that arose with that was that I was released from the jail with only the clothes on my back. I had no phone, no wallet, no money, and no direct way to get in contact with family. I have no family in this area, and so it was a fairly dire situation to go from one, issue into the next, and I now found myself homeless. I went to the PATH office, and they did quite a bit to help me, but I did have to stay at the Salvation Army for roughly 2 months. Within 2 days of being released from the jail, I had found employment in the restaurant industry, and I was able to start working, but was unable to provide housing for myself for 2 months, and had to struggle through that. And it was easily the most difficult thing I've ever been through.
Yeah, and can you speak to a little bit about the specific environment in the jails and also the shelter?
Well, in the jail, I was held in general population, which is what they call a pod, and it would have roughly 60 men inside this pod. And I can't give you any kind of square footage, but it is not large. So if you can imagine a scenario where there are 60 grown men who are sharing 5 showers, they're sharing 5 telephones, there is communal exercise equipment, communal dining tables. We had to wait in very cramped lines to receive our food because you are never allowed to leave the pod for any circumstances, and that includes when you eat. So we're eating in the same spaces that we're playing cards on, that we're exercising near, that we're watching TV. And so the concept of social distancing in a situation like that is absolutely impossible. And it is a very unsanitary environment. We were provided with 1 mop bucket per day in the morning to clean out 60 cells with, which was a near impossibility. And I think, just to summarize, as I had told you, and I wanted to be very clear, was that while I was detained in the jail, my greatest fear was not violence from any of the other inmates. It wasn't harassment from the guards. It wasn't the mind-numbing boredom. It wasn't even my case. Is that I was very, very scared of getting sick while I was in there because it was an ever-present threat. Due to how cramped we were, due to how unsanitary it was, and due to how extremely poor the medical care was. And that was genuinely a concern. But I did, when I left there and I was in the Salvation Army, the conditions there were, if possible, maybe even worse in some ways. I do believe that the Salvation Army is trying as hard as they can, but their resources are extremely limited, and they rely on the people who stay there to clean the facilities. And there were some times that it was, I will spare details, but it was disgusting. It was a disgusting situation in the bathrooms and the dorms. There are people coughing, sneezing, spitting, everything else, and it is impossible to keep that area clean. And within 1 week of being there, I was so sick that I had spiked a fever and had to be taken in to the hospital to get antibiotics because I'd gotten very sick. So it is a extremely cramped environment, and one that is impossible to socially distance yourself from anyone else.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I know, you're worried about some of the people that you still know that are in the jails, in the jail and the shelter as well. And I'm really happy to know that you have gotten into housing. Can you speak to how the COVID crisis has impacted your life now?
I can. I, had to work pretty hard, to get some stability underneath my feet. And I was very lucky. I was helped out by a program from Heartland Church that helped me with my housing, but it was still very difficult. And I did find eventually a well-paying job that was providing me with not just survival income, but stable, steady income that was helping move me forward in life. And I actually taken on a second job. I had both of these jobs, and I believe it was I can't give the exact date, but when the national emergency was declared, I lost both of those jobs within a 48-hour time span and had no prior warning whatsoever that this was a possibility, that it was maybe, hey, look ahead, that this might be coming up. There was no warning, and I lost both of those jobs. Unfortunately, I am like millions of other Americans and do not have enough in my savings to survive for an entire month straight on. I wish I could say I did, but I do not. And although I know I'm not going to be evicted from my apartment today, it has completely, the problem has reemerged, and I am still insecure with my housing because I do have to come up with my rent eventually. And I'm concerned on how to do that because the unemployment process that I've been going through is an absolute black hole, and I've gotten nowhere with. So basically, when it comes to, I lost both my jobs, but when it has come to any form of assistance to help with that, I've received none so far.
Thank you, Dane, for sharing your story tonight and being brave. Dane's story is one of many that demonstrates how serious the needs are of those who are most vulnerable and insecure in our community. We need temporary alternative housing options for people in our community who are homeless, people coming out of the jail who don't have a home to go to, people who are housing insecure and living one paycheck away from being evicted, victims of domestic violence who shouldn't be sheltering in place with their abuser, and for households who have family members who are high risk and shouldn't be around others displaying symptoms of the coronavirus. We also need additional aid to help people who are at risk of losing their housing and not able to take care of their families with limited to no income. Louis will now share updates on the progress made with direct aid.
Yeah, so my name is Louis. I'm with Bloomington-Normal chapter of Democratic Socialists of America, as well as a member of Illinois People's Action. And the encouraging word that we've received is that conversations are moving because of these calls, because of the actions that are happening, and because of the good work that's happening throughout our community. Elected officials, including members of the Bloomington City Council, are in conversation right now with both the city manager as well as the township assessor on how direct aid could move forward in our community. Now, already on these calls, if you've joined us for the last 3 calls, you'll know that we have the support of council members Carrillo, Craybill, and Emig. And I'm encouraged that on the line we have council member Scott Black. We've also heard from Bloomington Mayor Terry Renner and carry his support as well on the idea that we should be making the investment in direct aid for stories like what we just heard from Dane, as well as the next 2 that we'll hear. So I would like to hand things over to Candace Bird. Candace, are you on mute?
Yes. Hello all, my name is Candace. I'm one of the many residents in Bloomington that has lost my employment due to the shelter-in-place order. Even though we are considered an essential business, there aren't enough employees at my previous job to stay open if one of us gets sick. That puts everybody at risk. So what I want to talk about is the fact that even though there were some essentials being provided, I'm here to speak on behalf of my neighbors and my Facebook friends and people who just don't know what's next. So I've touched base with countless people who are out of work like myself, who have had reduced hours due to this pandemic. Every one of them, including myself, are wondering how long they can hold out before the bills are going to be due again. So I just want to be clear that the federal aid that we're expected to receive is not a monthly sum. So this puts many folks back in the same situation if this draws out any longer than we anticipate. And from the looks of things, I'm pretty sure it's going to. So I speak on behalf and didn't have time, on those who didn't have time to prepare to be out of work, who already lived paycheck to paycheck well before this crisis and can't manage to create a savings account due to the lack of livable wage that we already had. Many organizations are still active and available, but I can't say whether these programs are designed to help in a timely manner. And I don't know for sure if they will have the resources they need to meet what likely is going to be a peak demand. So that aside, these places, like any business, their first priority is keeping their doors open and their board members satisfied. This doesn't necessarily put the people first. This isn't the most viable option, and I feel the focus should be on council members ensuring that there are no residents left out or overlooked who will need some aid. We voted for you, and despite your ward not being the most affected, there are still folks out here who are affected, and it's your responsibility to step up. We are human beings going through the same pandemic. COVID has no qualifications, and neither should we when it comes to assisting our community. And now we're going to hear from Sandra. Tell us a little bit about your situation.
Thank you, Candice. Hello, everybody. My name is Sandra Rosales. I am a single person living by my own. I've been a member of Bloomington-Normal community since 1999, and I am part of Illinois People's Action. And as I described in last week's meeting, when Governor J.B. Pritzker ordered all the restaurants could remain open only for pickup or delivery, my employers at the new farmhouse diner tried to stay open for carry out for a couple of days. But the expenses on food preparation were a lot higher than the money coming in. So after a few days, my employers decided to close until new notice. I am the only one responsible for paying bills and rent a home, and not having the resources to continue is very disempowering. A huge factor also against my circumstances now is the fact that I am undocumented. And even though a stimulus package was approved in DC, it doesn't change anything for me. I do not qualify to benefit from it. I pay my taxes year after year. I don't get any kind of help from the government. I am a responsible citizen, but that doesn't matter at this moment because only American citizens qualify to get help in the federal COVID-19 stimulus plan. Being emotionally broken has become part of an undocumented person's identity, and moments like this are just reminders of that. I have been a contributor to this community and have been involved in making it a better place for everyone. But in difficult times, the government reminds me that they don't consider me part of the community that I support. I need you, my local officials, to do what the federal government refuses to do. Include me in this community as we get through this together and help me making this community a better place for all of us. Thank you so much. And now we're going with Don.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra and Candace, for those sacred stories. I want to welcome Alderperson Scott Black from the Bloomington City Council Ward 7 to the meeting tonight. Scott, are you on board?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Scott, we're going to be asking you 4 questions regarding direct aid.
Yes.
And as we discussed earlier, because of the consideration of your time, we're going to seek some concise answers to these fairly complex questions. And then at the end, we'll be providing you with 3 minutes to provide a statement as you wish. So if those are okay, I'd like to just start with the first question.
Perfect. Thank you.
We think that direct city aid is really a necessity in light of this crisis that none of us have ever experienced before. And we would like to ask you if you also agree with us that some degree of direct city aid is necessary, and knowing how it plays out is yet to be determined.
Absolutely. And I'm very much in favor of any direct aid programs. And I think this can come in many forms. It can come in the form of a credit on a utility bill. It can come in the form of direct aid to residents through the township. It can be through grants to non-for-profits, and it can be through tax and fee rebates. One of the things that I'm hearing from my colleagues and that I agree with as well is that whatever we do has to be targeted and measured for effectiveness and not impede the continuity of government. So that's your emergency response, that's your public works, and that's making sure that water is still delivered. So I'm open to all options that help Bloomington residents and small businesses.
Very good. The second question is more of a process implementation to the first one, which is, would you be willing to be a champion on the council to call for a special meeting to discuss that aid if such a special meeting is necessary?
It might be good news, but a special aid is, or a special meeting is not a prerequisite for any kind of discussion and or approval of any kind of process or program. But if we're in a position where we only have special meetings, I'd sign off on a structured special meeting, no problem.
Okay. And the third question is, we've had prior discussions over the Zoom calls with Alderperson Emig and Jeff Crable and Jennifer Carrillo and Mayor Renner. You're number 4, and what we need is number 5. And if you would be willing to really be that champion to bring that 5th vote on a majority for direct aid.
The challenge is that Terry doesn't get a vote
Right.
unless there's a tie. But I already am a champion in terms of talking to council members about my thoughts around direct aid. This is an unprecedented crisis, doing everything we can to find a way to make this work. This is literally the first thing I think of when I wake up in the morning and the last thing I think of before I go to bed at night. I want to come up with a way that we can help as many people as possible.
Very good. And just to be clear about the math, I believe it's Emig, yourself, Crable, Carrillo, and then we need 5.
Well, for depending on the program, yes, you need 5. 9 council members, majority wins. So 5-4 might be the split.
And you're willing to do that?
I am already a champion for no one has any doubts about how I feel about direct aid.
Sure, but and I don't mean to belabor it, but we need that. We can't just stop at 4. We have to get the 5th, and not that all the responsibility would be on your shoulders. Certainly, the other council alderpersons have agreed to also work for that 5th, but we have to get the 5.
Yes, that is how democracy works.
Yes, and then the final question is, are you willing to involve grassroots and faith community leaders, like some of the people that you see and hear on the call tonight, in identifying and helping shape what those solutions are? Those specifics that you mentioned in your first answer.
Absolutely, yes. I have always involved people. I love as many voices at the table as we possibly can get. We create stronger policies when more folks are brought into the process and can weigh in on whatever we're deciding.
Very good. Those are our questions that we have for you. I think we're still pretty good on the time for you. If you'd like to spend 3 minutes and express what's on your heart here, the time is yours.
Well, thank you. Again, I appreciate the invitation this evening. I don't think my cat's behind me, but you never know. As we're all working from home, our pets are making cameos in all of our video conferences. Spent a lot of time talking to other council members, folks in Normal, folks in the county, and one thing I've really been struck by is that nobody wants to see anyone suffer through this pandemic, whether it be professionally, whether it be financially, or whether it be personally, with their own health. And so kind of the concern that I'm hearing is that we're going to be thinking about this issue in a lot of different ways. And we're going to differ about how we go about these sorts of direct aid, but I have no doubts that city staff, city council members, the mayor, we don't want to see anybody fall through the cracks. And so we're going to do everything that we possibly can to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks and that we create a program and a process that allows for the biggest impact possible. And I think very strongly about our residents, those who are the most vulnerable, but I also think a lot about our small business community, businesses that make up what makes Bloomington, Bloomington. Whether it be bars or restaurants that aren't set up for a takeout, carry-out model, small businesses, game shops, record stores, places that make our community a great place to live. And I want to make sure that the city adds no burden to keeping them here, whether it be the employees that work there with their talent or the treasure of their experience into the fabric of our community. I am wanting to see us come out of this full steam ahead. And I think a lot about the continuity of services. So making sure that when someone calls 911, that we have a first responder that goes out and answers the call, making sure that there's no interruption in water services. And of course, garbage is picked up. Those are kind of the things that are the core of what Bloomington does. But anything above and beyond that, I want to see us craft a program that does a good job of filling in the gaps that have been created by whether it's from non-for-profits, whether it's from the federal stimulus, or whether it's from the state level. What can we do? And I am open to all of the above because we have to come up with something. I monitor the Illinois Municipal League every single day to make sure that if there's an idea that's out there, if we can capture it and use it, we will do it. And we will adapt it to our community. So I know the intention of all of our council members is good. We're going to differ about how we go about it. But at the end of the day, nobody wants anybody to suffer. And I'm excited for what we can do together moving forward.
Well, Alderman Black, thank you very much for that. You were right at 3 minutes. So thank you very much. And I'd like to now, I believe it's Olivia.
Sure. So my name is Olivia Butts and I'm with Black Lives Matter Bloomington-Normal, and I'm going to update us a little bit on decarcerate. So first of all, I wanted to thank everyone who participated in our call-in last Friday. We drove calls to decarcerate the jail, and we drove them towards Chief Judge Mark Fellheimer and State's Attorney Don Knapp. So I just wanted to remind us of some of our original demands that kind of fall under that decarcerate umbrella. So our original demands were to, 1, release nonviolent pretrial detainees and nonviolent high-risk inmates. 2, to accept new people to the jail only if they present an immediate threat. 3, to bar solitary confinement as a means to quarantine inmates. And 4, waive video conferencing fees during the no visitation period. So we're going to show a short video here that kind of talks a little bit more about these demands and why it's so important to decarcerate the McLean County Jail at this time.
One of the facts we know about the COVID-19 virus is that it can spread very quickly if it reaches groups of people in confined spaces. So naturally, it's easy to understand that our jail cells are highly vulnerable. They place groups of people in small spaces where there is no distancing and there is no escaping the virus. These jails also have a high turnover rate, so there is the potential to constantly infect and release people into the community. The rate of spread in our community could skyrocket if we don't address the danger from our jail cells. Now keep in mind, most of these people are innocent. They are being locked up pre-trial and don't have enough money to pay their bonds. If a bond has been set, that means that a judge decided they are able to leave if they paid their money bond. If you have money, it's easy. They set you free. But those who don't have money are locked away in jail. We are asking county officials to release folks on cash bail and nonviolent offenders in order to protect the health and safety of everyone in McLean County. If and when the virus reaches our jail cells, it is a death trap. Sheriff Sandidge acknowledges this fact, but then inexplicably refuses to act. This is inhumane. This is immoral. This is wrong. Other counties in Illinois have already released inmates, but McLean County's sheriff has taken a dangerous stance that poses a danger to everyone in our community. We are asking the good people of McLean County to please speak up to help us protect our public health and safety. We must act now, before it's too late. We're asking our community to please call Sheriff Sandidge, as well as our county's state's attorney and the chief judge, by dialing the phone numbers on your screen. Call Sheriff Sandidge at 309-888-5034. State's Attorney Don Knapp at 309-888-5400. And Chief Judge Mark Fellheimer at 309-888-5254. Please urge them to do the right thing. Release the inmates, those awaiting bond, nonviolent offenders, and at-risk inmates. Now, before it's too late.
So I wanted to update you all about a couple things that we've heard this past week in regards to decarceration. So the first is that Sheriff Sandidge has stated the jail has reduced its population by 1/3, which we find to be very positive, especially during this time. The second is that Chief Judge Mark Fellheimer stated the only people incarcerated are those that pose a clear and present danger to the public. And while that's good, we are still asking that all folks being held on cash bail be released. We know that if a judge sets a person's bail, that means the judge decided that they were not a harm to the community. If an inmate really poses a danger if released, the cash bond would have not been issued by that judge. So finally, this week, we are asking folks to share that video. Lewis is going to drop it into the chat bar right now. And we're asking people to drive calls to the number listed about the cost of visitation. So Sheriff Sandidge today in an online meeting, quote, said that it was, quote, offensive to ask that visitation be free during this time. But as we know, it's more important than ever to be in contact with your loved ones, especially if they are stuck in the McLean County Jail. Currently, it costs $7.50 to video chat with someone in the McLean County Jail for 30 minutes. So, if visitations were available during this time, it would be free for people to visit their loved ones in the McLean County Jail. But because the jail is shut down, as are many other businesses and organizations, it costs $7.50 just for a 30-minute video call. And if you were just to have a regular phone call, it costs 25 cents a minute. So this is crazy expensive. And we know that the jail has the ability to provide these services for free or waive the cost just during the coronavirus time. So this week, we're going to ask you to get involved in a couple different ways. The first is calling the numbers listed in that video and sharing that video, whether it's with a couple of friends, whether it's in Facebook Messenger or on your timeline. If you're able to call at least one number in that was listed in that video and share the video, can you comment a yes in the chat box? That would be great. So again, if you're able to share this video and call at least one of the county officials listed, can you go ahead and comment yes in the chat bar? Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna pass it over to Candace and she's gonna tell you a little bit about direct aid and how you can get involved with her cause this week.
All right, everyone. So we started this meeting with 3 of the 5 votes that we need with Councilmember Black on board. We are now up to 4. So that is good news. But what this means is that we have one more person that counts on the council that we need to join us in calling for the direct aid that we need, and who has the power to determine whether or not the city will provide to help those who are hurt first and worst. So the Bloomington Council is going to meet again on April 13th. And we need you to use your updated action guide, which will be linked in the chat above, and get all of your friends to join you in moving that one last vote. So if everyone is able to do that, can we get you to type yes again in the chat? And we can count on you to join us one more time. Again, that date is April 13th, and the link will be in the chat above. All right, and now we're going to wrap up for our closing with Joel. Joel, are you there?
Thank you, Candace. I was on mute. So as Candace was talking about sharing those pieces, this is so important to follow through. Make sure that you get that video and share it out. I know if you're on Facebook that Black Lives Matter has already shared it, so it's really easy to go and find that and share that with all of your friends. Share it via email with other people with that link. And then reach out to your council members and contact them before that April 13th meeting using that action guide that was linked. But also we need to continue, if you haven't already, sign the petition. You can access that at the short link there. And then help us grow. Make sure that you invite people to our next meeting. That's going to be next week. We're going to be meeting on Wednesday again instead of Tuesday. This was just a one-time shift for our friends who will be celebrating the beginning of Passover tomorrow. Next week, we'll be back on Wednesday at 7 p.m. So make sure to join us and invite all of your friends. Tell them to come and see everything. We also are still working with that mutual aid team. I got an update today from Tori, who said that they've run 27 errands in the last 7 days, and they've been working hard on onboarding new volunteers so that they can support even more people. This is so important. So make sure that you share this phone number out. If you've seen that image on social media, share it out again. Share it with anybody who you think might need this. Remember that we've got the English language line and the Spanish language line. Those are two different phone numbers. For English, that will be 309-839-9496. And for Spanish, 309-232-8902. Again, those are on Facebook. Check out Illinois People's Action, Democratic Socialists of America, Bloomington-Normal, or Black Lives Matter, Bloomington-Normal, to see that image and share it out and get that number. It's so important that we get that in front of as many people as possible so people who need it know where they can go for help to have essentials delivered to them if they're at high risk and shouldn't be leaving their home. And then finally, as always, if you have a personal story that you want to share, share that with us. Contact us at organizingoncovid@gmail.com. We love to hear those stories of what's happening in the community, whether it's something positive, maybe something that you've seen that's really great that's happening in the community and people who are banding together to support one another, or your story of need and your personal need or something that you've seen that we need to address together as a community. So please do all of these things. Make sure to share that video and contact your city council officials above all. But now we're going to move into our Q&A section. So it's time, if you've got questions, anything that you'd like to direct at any of our speakers from tonight, or general questions about what's going on, feel free to throw that in the chat, and we'll be pointing out some of those questions over the next couple of minutes. So we got a message from Carla Bailey Smith, who said, I never know how to get these links after the meeting is over. Louis, could you maybe share with us what's going to be the best way for people to make sure that they can find this stuff after we get off the call?
Yeah, so we will be sure to include these links as part of the Facebook event for the next meeting. That's already been linked and currently is being hosted both on the Blono DSA and the BLM DSA or the BLM Blono pages. We'll also be doing a follow-up email and we'll be sure to include those links there. And then one way to stay up to speed on not only these calls and the actions that follow is to make sure to follow Illinois People's Action, Blono DSA, as well as BLM Blono for everything related to these calls and all kinds of great ways to get involved in the community.
Thank you, Louis. So it sounds like if you want those links, make sure that the first thing you do is go and say that you're going to that event next week, share it with your friends, and then click on the links because you'll be able to find those in that Facebook event. We had another question from an anonymous attendee, very mysterious, who said, have you had an answer from Jamie Matthey? And Don, do you want to speak to that?
I answered in an unanonymous way, which was, we have not heard, but in all fairness, we haven't asked him yet. And I think that that is on the very short list of what we should be doing.
Thank you, Don. And of course, would you say that it's good for people to be reaching out, even though we haven't talked to him on this weekly call yet? They should still be reaching out to him, especially if he is their representative on the city council.
I think that's well said. I think as we were told by Alderperson Black, that democracy is a good thing and democracy works when everyday people participate in that process and communicate with decision makers, elected officials, and this is the time to do that.
Thank you, Don. So we have another question from Kara McMorris. Kara said, well, actually, Kara, I'm going to unmute you. I'm going to see if you don't mind asking for yourself. Kara, are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thanks, Kara.
Great. I just am wondering, because it's been 4 weeks that we've been in communication as a group. And so I just wonder what our local situation is. Is PATH being overwhelmed? How are people meeting their basic needs who have lost jobs or who are in these dire situations? I feel like lots of help is being promised, but I mean, my husband and I have just had a slight decrease in our income and we're feeling it. So I just know people who lost their income completely. I'm just wondering how they're surviving. What are we missing, or is there more that needs to be done?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Kara. Cecilia, is that something that you can speak to a little bit?
Yeah, so I know we rely heavily on our social services to provide aid, and in a time like this, there's more help needed than usual. So PATH, I know, has been burdened with just a blow up of calls. I know the shelters have also been feeling pretty burdened, as well as they've had to send many staff members home who are not safe to be working in the shelters, so they have limited staff capacity. But yeah, we encourage you to reach out to your council members and speak to the needs that we've articulated tonight.
Thank you, Cecilia. And thank you, Kara, for that question. I think that's on a lot of people's minds. We had another question from Kels Harms. Kels, I'm going to unmute you. Are you with us?
Hi, yes, sorry, we're out for a walk, so sorry about the background noise. I was just wondering if we knew if the $7.50 for half an hour of video conferencing was based on the platform that they're using, or if it was some other form of rolled up charges. And, you know, we've got lots of conferencing platforms that are providing free access during this time. So I was just wondering about that and why that charge from the jail.
Yeah, thank you, Kels. Olivia, can you speak to that?
Sure, yeah, and we've had a couple of other questions about video video calls. So from my understanding, ICS Solutions, which is the video and the service that McLean County uses, they outsource their visitation services, their video calls, their phone calls to this company called ICS Solutions. This happened when the new jail was built. ICS Solutions has no control over how much the county charges. I'm sure that the county, pays ICS Solutions some amount of money for their services, but they do not actually set the fee for how much you have to pay. So depending on the county, you might pay more, you might pay a little bit less. And McLean County, per ICS, has full control over if they were to offer a free visit or not. So whether or not McLean County would take a hit for that in terms of how much they actually have to pay ICS based on their contracts, I do not know, but they do have complete control over making those video calls free. I've also saw a question, would it be a good idea to ask the county board members to fund video phone calls for 3 months until in-person meetings are allowed? I think that would be a great idea. I think especially during this time, people are very nervous with loved ones being in jail, being in such close quarters with other people, having limited access to things that keep you safe during this time. So I think that would be a really great thing that we could even potentially work on, is asking the county board to cover something like that for a few months.
Thank you, Olivia, for sharing. I'm looking through our questions right now. It looks like we've got one here from Trent, but Trent, I'm sorry, I'm not able to find you in our list. Trent said, are the shelters asking for volunteers? I'm not sure, does anybody on our panel know, maybe at the shelter or other places where people can actively volunteer to make a difference right now?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say I can only speak for Home Sweet Home. I know at this time they have stopped all volunteers from coming in. I know as far as the food bank and the food distribution were some of the things that they were getting assistance with, and they have shut that down just for the safety of the residents. But the other organizations I do not know about.
Yeah, I also don't know if the Salvation Army is looking for volunteers right now, or if they have tasks that would be safe for people to help with, but I think that's something that we can find out soon.
Okay, thank you, Cecilia. So maybe we'll be able to report back with more next week. I do want to also point out, we had a comment here from Derek, who said, if you know someone who has lost their income and are now in need, Grounded Blono volunteers are delivering boxes of food from local food pantries at least once a week. So please reach out. And it looks like he shared that link in chat. So if that's something that either you or somebody you know is in that situation, has lost their income and needs food, and maybe can't leave the house, doesn't have another way to get it, check out that link and make sure to share it with anybody. So panelists, I'll pass it to you. Did you see any other questions that I've missed that you'd like to address here before we go? Oh, we've got one more comment here in chat. If you are a student, School Street Food Pantry is also open on Fridays. And I believe that they've been doing pre-packed bags to avoid people going into the space and moving around together at the same time. So that's definitely an option if you're a student. And Joe, I'll bring you on. And I believe it's the case that you can be a student anywhere, not just at Illinois State University, right? Are you with us, Joe?
Yes, I'm here. That is the case. Any of the local colleges, I think, and high schools actually, yeah.
Okay, so that sounds like a great opportunity for anybody who's a student. And that's pick up at the First United Methodist Church in Normal, Illinois on School Street. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, catty corner from the Alamo, right? Well,
Yes.
And down the block, I guess, across from the Bone Student Center.
Yeah, near Hewitt, Manchester, that whole area, yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you so much for sharing, Joe. We've got a couple of other people chiming in on that, saying you can be a local college student, community college student, or trade school student. to pick up at the school street food pantry. So make sure if you know anybody who needs that to share it out. Okay, well, thank you everybody so much for joining us. We will be posting this video online to share with people who weren't able to make it tonight. And we'll be meeting again next week. So make sure to click that link, say you're going, invite your friends, and we'll see you next week.
Joel, we're going to have a prayer now?
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Yes, we're going to have a prayer now.
I almost forgot the most important part. Please do not sign off, folks. We're going to have a prayer now with Reverend Black from Wayman AME Church.
Let us pray. Creator God, you have heard our concerns. Grant us wisdom as we address the issues affecting the marginal, the underemployed, the homeless, and those on the fringes of our community. Lord, provide the resources needed to resolve these issues. Speak to the heart of our governmental officials that they would have compassion and empathy and would act for the good of those dispossessed and vulnerable. Protect our children that have to shelter in with abusers. Lord, have mercy on your people. Forgive us for being complicit and silent to the issues at hand. Open our eyes to the plight of others. May our love for our neighbor extend to helping hands and direct aid. Bless your people in the struggle for social justice. Thank you, God. Keep us safe. This I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Black, and have a good night, everybody.